The asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter had long since ceased to be a barrier to human expansion. Instead, it had become our garden, where other species saw chaos, chunks of rock hurtling through the void. We saw patterns, possibilities, and most importantly, profits. Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of the harvester ship Dandelion, watching as another carefully calculated gravitational nudge sent a cluster of asteroids tumbling into their collection orbit. The massive vessel's name wasn't chosen for its delicate yellow color, but rather for its function. Like its earthly namesake, it scattered seeds. In this case, those seeds were autonomous mining drones, spreading through space to gather resources. Another beautiful crop, Captain, her first officer, Miguel Santos, said from behind her. He was reviewing the mineral composition data streaming in from the drones. Heavy on rare earths this time. The colonies on Mars will be pleased. Sarah nodded, but her attention was fixed on something else. Among the standard readings of iron, nickel, and precious metals, there was an anomaly. One of the asteroids in their current cluster was giving off unusual energy signatures. Miguel, pull up the spectral analysis of AST-2247, she requested, her eyes narrowing at the holographic display. The readings made no sense. The material they were detecting shouldn't exist, at least not naturally. Within hours, the Dandelion had adjusted its course to make a closer approach to the anomalous asteroid. As they drew near, the mystery only deepened. The rock was unremarkable in size, barely 2 kilometers across, but its surface gleamed with veins of a metal that seemed to drink in light rather than reflect it. "We're going to need to modify the mining protocols," Sarah announced after their initial scans. "This isn't something we can just carve up and process like normal ore." The standard procedure would have been to break down the asteroid into manageable chunks, but something about this material suggested that would be a mistake. Instead, Sarah ordered a careful extraction, treating the veins of strange metal with the same delicacy archaeologists once reserved for dinosaur bones. As the first samples were brought aboard for analysis, the Dandelion's science officer, Dr. Yuki Tanaka, became increasingly excited. "Captain, this material, it's like nothing we've ever encountered. It appears to have a crystalline structure, but it's not fixed. The atomic arrangement shifts in response to external stimuli." "External stimuli?" Sarah asked, watching as Yuki ran various tests on a sample roughly the size of her palm. "Everything," Yuki replied, her voice filled with wonder. "Temperature, pressure, sound, light, even brain waves. Look at this." She placed the sample on a sensor pad and connected herself to an EEG monitor. As her neural activity changed, subtle patterns rippled through the metal surface. The discovery should have been their biggest concern, but fate had other plans. Just as they were preparing to send their preliminary findings back to Earth, the Dandelion's long-range sensors detected an approaching vessel. It wasn't human in origin. The ship that dropped out of FTL near their position was elegant in a way that suggested ancient knowledge rather than modern engineering. It moved with impossible grace, adjusting its trajectory with micro-precision that made the Dandelion's best maneuvers look clumsy in comparison. "We're receiving a transmission," Miguel reported, his fingers dancing over the communications console. It's in perfect English. The message was simple. "Greetings, meteor farmers. We are the archivists. We have been watching your species' progress with great interest, and it seems you have found something that demands our attention." Sarah straightened her uniform, a habit from her Earth Force days. "Open a channel," she ordered. The face that appeared on their view screen was distinctly alien, multiple eyes arranged in a circular pattern, with what appeared to be luminescent markings tracing patterns across gray-green skin. "I am Keeper Vaxter of the Archival Fleet," the alien announced. "We have spent millennia documenting the rise and fall of civilizations across this galaxy. When we detected your interaction with the stellar remnant, we knew it was time to make contact." "Stellar remnant?" Sarah asked, glancing at the sample still sitting on Yuki's sensor pad. "What you have discovered," Vaxter explained, is a fragment of a star that died long before your species learned to make fire. But it is not any ordinary stellar material. This particular star was different, special, and the fact that your species can interact with it at all is unprecedented. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. She had always known that humanity's expansion into space would eventually lead to first contact, but she had never expected it to happen like this, on a routine mining operation, because of a piece of metal that apparently shouldn't exist. There are others, Baxter continued, who have sought this material for generations. None have succeeded in doing more than locating it. But you, the archivist's multiple eyes focused intently on the sample. You have not only found it, but begun to understand it. Perhaps the legends were true after all. What legends? Sarah asked, though part of her wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. That this material, this star metal, as you might call it, was waiting for a species that could see the patterns in chaos, that could farm the void between worlds, that could touch the very essence of a dead star and make it sing. Baxter's markings pulsed with a soft light, waiting, perhaps, for you. As Sarah looked at the small piece of metal that had triggered this encounter, she realized that their simple mining operation had just become something far more significant. Humanity had unwittingly stumbled upon something that would change not just our future, but our understanding of our place in the galaxy. The meteor farmers had harvested something far more valuable than mere minerals. They had discovered humanity's next great frontier. 5 years after the dandelion's discovery, the skyline of New Shanghai stretched impossibly toward the stars. Buildings of conventional materials stood in the shadow of structures that seemed to defy not just engineering, but reality itself. Towers of star metal rose and shifted like frozen waves, responding to the collective consciousness of the millions who lived and worked within them. Dr. Yuki Tanaka stood in her laboratory at the heart of the Stellar Architecture Institute, watching as a small sample of star metal morphed under the influence of her latest test subject. The volunteer, a young architect named Marcus Way, sat in deep concentration, his neural patterns displayed on nearby monitors. Remarkable, observed Keeper Baxter, who had become a permanent liaison between humanity and the archivists. Even after all this time, your species continues to surprise us. No other civilization has achieved such harmony with the material. The star metal beneath Marcus's influence was forming complex geometric patterns, creating structures at a microscopic level that shouldn't have been possible according to conventional physics. But that was the nature of the material. It didn't just ignore the rules, it wrote new ones. It's not just about controlling it, Yuki explained, making notes as Marcus continued his demonstration. It's about understanding that we're not really controlling it at all. We're having a conversation with it. The discovery that the star metal responded to human consciousness had been just the beginning. What had followed was a revolution in everything from architecture to computing, from art to space travel. The material didn't just react to human thoughts, it amplified them, translated them into physical reality in ways that even now they were still struggling to fully comprehend. High above the laboratory, Sarah Chen, now Director of Stellar Resources, was hosting a delegation of alien representatives in one of the star metal towers. The building adjusted its internal structure as they walked, creating paths and spaces that accommodated the varying physiologies of their visitors. As you can see, Sarah explained to the assembled group, the applications extend far beyond simple construction. The star metal allows us to create truly adaptive environments, spaces that can respond to the needs of any species. A meridian ambassador, their crystalline form refracting light in complex patterns, raised what passed for a hand. But surely, Director Chen, you understand our concerns. This material grants your species unprecedented advantages. Some would say dangerous advantages. Sarah had heard these concerns before. In the 5 years since the discovery, humanity's rapid advancement had made many other species nervous. The ability to create structures that could ignore conventional physics, that could adapt and change at will, that could even process and store information at the quantum level. It all seemed too much, too fast. "We understand your concerns," Sarah replied diplomatically, "which is why we've been completely transparent about our research and development. Everything we learn, we share with the galactic community." What she didn't say, what everyone in the room already knew, was that sharing the knowledge made little difference. Other species could study the star metal, could understand its properties on a theoretical level, but none could interact with it the way humans could. It remained inert in their presence, refusing to display the remarkable properties that made it so valuable. In orbit above Earth, Miguel Santos commanded the construction platform Archimedes, overseeing the assembly of humanity's most ambitious project yet, a space elevator made entirely of star metal. The structure would not only connect Earth to space, but would also serve as a proof of concept for even more ambitious projects. Status report. He called out to his team, watching as autonomous construction units guided streams of the dark, light-absorbing material into place. "The base anchor is responding perfectly to planetary gravitational stresses," his chief engineer reported. "The material is automatically adjusting its molecular structure to maintain optimal tensile strength. It's like it knows what we're trying to build." And that was the heart of it, Miguel reflected. The star metal didn't just respond to human consciousness. It seemed to understand human intention. It was as if the material itself wanted to help build, to create, to explore. Back in her laboratory, Yuki was reviewing the latest data with Vaxter when an alert caught her attention. The star metal samples they were monitoring had begun displaying new behavior patterns. "This is unexpected," Vaxter noted, their bioluminescent markings pulsing with interest. "The material appears to be learning." Yuki studied the readings with growing excitement. The star metal wasn't just responding to immediate neural inputs anymore. It was developing response patterns, anticipating human needs, evolving. "It's not just learning," she realized. "It's remembering. Every interaction, every construction, every experiment. It's all being stored somehow, shared across all samples of the material. We're not just building with it. You're teaching it," Vaxter finished. "And it is teaching you in return." As night fell over New Shanghai, the star metal buildings shimmered with subtle patterns of absorbed light, their surfaces rippling like the surface of a dark ocean. Inside countless laboratories, offices, and homes, humans continued to explore the possibilities of their mysterious inheritance, pushing the boundaries of what was possible. But in the darkness between the stars, other forces were stirring. The news of humanity's success with the star metal had spread far beyond Earth's solar system, and not everyone was content to simply watch and wonder. Some saw humanity's unique ability as a threat, others as an opportunity to be exploited. The age of the meteor farmers was ending. The age of the city builders had begun, and with it came challenges that would test not just humanity's ability to build with the star metal, but our right to use it at all. The Galactic Council's emergency session was being held in one of humanity's star metal structures, a fact that wasn't lost on any of the assembled representatives. The building's fluid architecture adjusted continuously, providing optimal conditions for each species present, a silent demonstration of exactly what they had gathered to discuss. Director Sarah Chen sat beside Earth's ambassador, watching as species after species presented their attempts to replicate humanity's success with the star metal. The Meridians, despite their mastery of crystalline technologies, had failed to elicit even the slightest response from the material. The Vex Collective, with their hyper-evolved neural networks, had achieved nothing but frustration. "This inequality cannot stand," declared the Vex representative, their synthetic form pulsing with agitation. "The star metal represents the single greatest technological advancement since the discovery of FTL travel. Its restriction to a single species threatens the balance of power that has maintained peace for millennia." From her position in the observation gallery, Dr. Yuki Tanaka exchanged glances with Keeper Vaxter. They had made a breakthrough in their research just days before, But now Yuki wondered if sharing it would make things better or worse. The council recognizes Dr. Tanaka, the chief arbiter announced. Yuki made her way to the central platform, aware of the hundreds of alien eyes focused on her. Honorable representatives, she began. Our latest research has revealed something unexpected about the star metal's nature. We've discovered why it responds only to human consciousness. She paused, knowing her next words would change everything. It's because we're related. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of voices and electromagnetic communications. The chief arbiter had to emit a subsonic pulse to restore order. Explain, demanded the Meridian ambassador, their crystalline form fracturing light into sharp patterns that reflected their agitation. Yuki gestured, and a holographic display appeared above the chamber. The star metal isn't just a material, it's what remains of an ancient consciousness. The star that created it wasn't a natural phenomenon. It was engineered, designed to preserve something, or someone. The display showed complex patterns of neural activity, human brainwaves alongside the quantum fluctuations observed in the star metal. The similarity was unmistakable. We've discovered fragments of genetic code embedded in material's quantum structure, Yuki continued. When compared to human DNA, there are similarities that cannot be explained by convergent evolution. Whoever created the star metal, they were our ancestors. The silence that followed was profound. It was Keeper Baxter who finally broke it, their luminescent markings pulsing with what seemed like satisfaction. The archivists have long suspected something like this, they admitted. There are records, fragments of ancient data, speaking of a civilization that seeded the galaxy with their essence, preserved in the hearts of dying stars. We never understood what the records meant, until now. In orbit above Earth, Miguel Santos was overseeing the completion of the space elevator when the news reached him. The star metal seemed to react to the revelation, the entire structure humming with a frequency that their instruments could barely detect. It's like it knows we figured it out, his chief engineer commented, watching as the material flowed and shifted with unprecedented fluidity. Like it's been waiting for us to understand. But understanding brought new challenges. As word spread through the galactic community, reactions varied from awe to envy to fear. Some species saw humanity's connection to the star metal as proof that we were meant to inherit the galaxy. Others saw it as a threat that needed to be contained. In her private office in New Shanghai, Sarah Chen received a priority communication from Earth's orbital defense network. Multiple fleets of unknown configuration had been detected entering the outer solar system. They weren't responding to hails. Have the star metal structures begun responding to the approach? She asked her security chief. Yes, Director. All installations are showing increased activity. The material seems agitated. Sarah thought about the implications of what they had discovered. The star metal wasn't just a tool or a resource. It was a legacy, a gift from an ancient version of humanity that had achieved things they were only beginning to understand. And now, it seemed, they would have to defend that legacy. But as she watched the star metal buildings of New Shanghai ripple with contained energy, Sarah realized that perhaps defense wasn't what the ancient engineers had in mind. The material hadn't just been waiting for humanity to find it. It had been waiting for humanity to understand it. And understanding meant more than just building impossible cities or space elevators. In her laboratory, Yuki was documenting unprecedented changes in the star metal's behavior. The quantum patterns were becoming more complex, more organized, as if the material was waking up from a long sleep. It's not just responding to us anymore, she told Baxter, watching as complex equations and diagrams formed spontaneously in the samples. It's trying to tell us something. The archivists studied the patterns with their multiple eyes. Perhaps, they suggested, this is what it was designed for all along. Not just to wait for you to find it, but to guide you once you were ready. As the unknown fleets drew closer to Earth, humanity stood at a crossroads. We had built cities that defied physics, created structures that touched the stars, and discovered our connection to an ancient legacy. But our greatest challenge lay ahead, not in building with the star metal, but in understanding why it had been left for us to find. The answer, when it came, would change not just humanity's future, but the future of every species in the galaxy. The age of building was ending. The age of awakening was about to begin. The alien fleets emerged from FTL travel in perfect formation, their ships arranged in concentric rings around Earth. They made no aggressive moves, initiated no attacks. They simply waited, a silent siege of geometric precision that turned Earth's orbit into a cage of starships. In the command center beneath New Shanghai, Sarah Chen studied the tactical displays with growing concern. The star metal buildings above had begun to pulse with patterns that their instruments couldn't fully decode, responding to some stimulus that only they could detect. "They're not here to fight," Miguel Santos observed, his voice coming through the quantum-entangled communications link from the space elevator. "This is a containment operation." "Agreed," Sarah replied, watching as more ships joined the blockade. "They're not trying to destroy us. They're trying to isolate us until they can figure out how to control the star metal themselves." In her laboratory deep within the Stellar Architecture Institute, Yuki Tanaka was witnessing something extraordinary. The star metal samples weren't just active. They were transforming. Complex structures were emerging spontaneously, forming and reforming in patterns that seemed almost familiar. "It's like watching a language evolve in real time," Keeper Vaxter noted, their multiple eyes tracking the changes. "But who is speaking, and to whom?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Marcus Way, the young architect who had shown such aptitude with the star metal, burst into the lab, his eyes wide with excitement and fear. "The buildings," he gasped, "they're not just responding anymore. They're remembering." And what they remember. He trailed off, struggling to find the words. Yuki understood. She had felt it too, a growing awareness in the star metal, a sense of purpose that went far beyond mere construction. The material wasn't just a tool or even a legacy. It was a key, and humanity's interaction with it had begun a process that none of them fully understood. Above them, the siege continued in silence. The alien fleet had grown to include ships from dozens of species, some known to humanity, others completely foreign. Their message was clear. Earth would remain contained until the secret of the star metal was shared. But there was no secret to share. The truth was written in human DNA, encoded in the quantum structure of the star metal itself. Humanity's ancestors hadn't just left behind a remarkable building material. They had left behind part of themselves, preserved in the heart of a dying star, waiting for their descendants to evolve enough to understand it. In orbit, Miguel watched as the space elevator's star metal structure began to change. The changes were subtle at first, new patterns emerging in the material's surface, strange geometries forming and dissolving. But soon, the changes became more dramatic. "Director," he called down to Sarah, "I think you need to see this. The elevator, it's not just an elevator anymore." The structure was transforming, extending new branches and connections that reached out toward Earth's orbital space. But instead of threatening the alien blockade, it seemed to be offering something to them. "It's creating interfaces," Yuki realized, studying the data streaming in from orbital sensors. "The star metal isn't just responding to us anymore. It's trying to communicate with them." The revelation hit Sarah like a physical force. The ancient engineers hadn't just left behind a material that only humans could use. They had created a bridge, a means of connection that required human consciousness to activate, but was meant to benefit all species. As if to confirm this understanding, the star metal structures across Earth began to pulse with new energy. In New Shanghai, in orbital platforms, in research facilities around the world, the material responded to a program that had lain dormant for millions of years. "Look at these readings," Yuki called out, her voice filled with wonder. The quantum patterns in the star metal were aligning, forming structures of unprecedented complexity. "It's not just communicating, it's transforming, and it's taking us with it." The alien fleet watched as Earth's star metal structures began to glow with an inner light that defied conventional physics. The space elevator had become a beacon, broadcasting a message that required no translation. We were not meant to keep this gift. We were meant to share it. But first, we had to understand it. And to understand it, we had to understand ourselves. In her office atop the highest star metal tower in New Shanghai, Sarah received a communication from the fleet's command ship. The message was simple: we are listening. The siege had failed, but not because of human weapons or defenses. It had failed because it was based on a fundamental misunderstanding. The star metal wasn't a resource to be controlled or a weapon to be contained. It was a testament to a truth that humanity's ancestors had discovered eons ago. True power lies not in isolation, but in connection. As the first alien representatives began to dock with the transformed space elevator, humanity stood ready to share not just the star metal, but the understanding that came with it. The age of separation was ending. The age of unity was about to begin. 1 year after the failed siege of Earth, the skyline of New Shanghai had become unrecognizable. The star metal structures no longer simply reached for the stars. They seemed to touch them, creating impossible geometries that connected Earth to the wider galaxy in ways that transcended traditional space travel. But the most remarkable changes weren't visible to the naked eye. In research centers across Earth and beyond, humans and aliens worked together, exploring the true potential of what the star metal had been designed to achieve. Dr. Yuki Tanaka stood in her expanded laboratory, now filled with representatives from a dozen different species. The room itself shifted and flowed around them, the star metal responding not just to human consciousness now, but to a carefully orchestrated harmony of minds. The key was never in controlling it, she explained to a group of newly arrived researchers. It was in understanding that we were meant to be catalysts, the bridge between the material and other forms of consciousness. Keeper Baxter, who had remained on Earth as the primary archivist liaison, added their own insights. Your ancestors understood something that we are only now beginning to grasp. The greatest achievements don't come from isolation, but from connection. They didn't preserve their legacy in the stars to make you powerful. They did it to make you essential. In orbit, the space elevator had evolved into something far more significant. Under Miguel Santos's supervision, it had become the first of many nexus points, structures that served as physical and metaphysical bridges between species. The star metal didn't just facilitate travel or communication. It enabled understanding on a fundamental level. It's like having a universal translator for consciousness itself, Miguel explained to Sarah Chen during one of their regular inspections. Every species experiences reality differently, but the star metal lets us share those experiences directly. Sarah nodded, watching as ships from across the galaxy docked with the nexus point. Each arrival brought new perspectives, new ways of thinking, new possibilities to explore. The very aliens who had once sought to contain humanity now came eagerly to learn and share. Marcus Way, whose architectural insights had helped unlock some of the star metal's earliest secrets, now led teams of mixed-species designers in creating structures that existed simultaneously in multiple dimensions. "We're not just building cities anymore," he would often say. "We're building connections." The star metal itself continued to evolve, its quantum structures growing more complex as it interacted with more diverse forms of consciousness. But it never lost its special resonance with human minds. Instead, it used that connection to facilitate broader understanding. In the heart of New Shanghai, Sarah stood before the Galactic Council, now permanently housed in a star metal structure that adapted to perfectly serve its function of bringing species together. A year ago, she addressed the assembled representatives. "Many of you feared that humanity's unique connection to the star metal would upset the balance of power in our galaxy. Today, I believe we can all see that the opposite has occurred." The evidence was all around them. The star metal cities had become more than mere habitats. They were living symbols of cooperation, their very existence dependent on the harmonious interaction of multiple species. The materials that had once seemed to favor humanity now served as bridges between all forms of life. Keeper Baxter, speaking for the archivists, shared ancient records that had finally been decoded with the help of the awakened star metal. Your ancestors faced a choice, they revealed. They had achieved technological supremacy, mastered the forces of nature, even learned to preserve their essence in the hearts of stars. But they saw that such power, held by one species alone, would ultimately lead to stagnation. So they chose a different path. Yuki continued, understanding now the full scope of their inheritance. They encoded their legacy not just in the star metal, but in their descendants, in us. They made sure that when we finally discovered their gift, we would be ready not to rule, but to unite. The meteor farmers had become city builders, and the city builders had become bridge makers. Humanity's role in the galaxy was not to dominate through our unique connection to the star metal, but to serve as conductors in a grand symphony of consciousness. As Sarah looked out over the transformed landscape of Earth, she saw not just the achievement of her own species, but the beginning of something far greater. The star metal cities were no longer monuments to human ingenuity. They were testament to the power of connection, understanding, and shared growth. In her laboratory, Yuki recorded yet another breakthrough as a young Meridian researcher, working in harmony with human colleagues, discovered a new way to shape the star metal's quantum structure. The material responded not just to their combined consciousness, but to their shared purpose. We've only begun to understand what's possible, she noted in her research logs. The star metal isn't just a gift from our past. It's a key to our future, all of our futures. And in the darkness between the stars, other fragments of star metal waited to be discovered, each one a piece of the bridge that humanity's ancestors had begun building eons ago. The age of isolation was over. The age of connection had begun. And humanity, the species that had learned to farm meteors and build cities from star metal, had found its true purpose, not to rule the galaxy, but to help it grow together. The story of the star metal cities would be told for generations to come, not as a tale of human triumph, but as a reminder that the greatest achievements come not from standing alone, but from building bridges between the stars.